When I stepped into the abandoned church, the air felt heavier than anywhere I had ever prayed before. The building was silent in a way that didn't feel empty. It felt aware. Dust floated in the narrow beams of moonlight piercing through the broken windows, landing on the old wooden pews like memories that refused to die. Paint peeled off the walls in long ghost-like strips. The altar was cracked, leaning slightly, as if it had grown tired of standing alone in the dark. Every footstep echoed deeper than the last, as though the church had been starving for sound. I set my bag down near the altar, feeling an unsettling mixture of reverence and intrusion, as if I'd de-stepped into a place where time had stopped obeying the rules. The door slammed behind me with a force I wasn't prepared for, even though I knew it was the wind. Still, the way the sound spread through the sanctuary made something in my chest tighten. I knelt at the center aisle, whispering my first prayer. But my voice felt swallowed, as if the walls were listening more than God was. The church seemed to breathe with me, expanding and contracting with every inhale and exhale. I had never felt a room so alive and yet so abandoned. For the first hour, I tried to push past the discomfort, focusing on scripture, whispering verses, asking God to reveal something, anything. But the deeper the night settled, the more I realized this wasn't just a place where people once prayed. It was a place where people once cried, confessed, sought deliverance, and maybe left pieces of themselves behind, the kind of pieces that linger. As midnight approached, something shifted in the atmosphere. The air grew colder, enough to make my fingertips numb. The shadows lengthened, though nothing had moved, and the silence became so thick it felt like it was pressing against my skin. That was when I realized I wasn't praying in an abandoned church. I was praying inside a memory that refused to fade. Around 1 a.m., I started hearing sounds that didn't belong to an empty building. Faint footsteps, but too soft to be human. A whisper of movement coming from the balcony above me. I pointed my flashlight upward, but the beam seemed swallowed by darkness before it reached the railing. I decided not to investigate, not out of fear, but because I felt that whatever was there wasn't threatening me. It was observing me. As I continued praying, I felt waves of emotion rise inside me for no reason. Sadness, like someone mourning a loss that wasn't mine. Then a strange warmth, almost like a hand pressed gently on my shoulder. Then a weight, like someone kneeling beside me in the empty aisle. I opened my eyes but saw nothing. Yet I couldn't shake the impression that I wasn't alone. The church felt full of stories, full of echoes, full of something spiritual that hadn't left when the people did. I walked slowly toward the altar, the wooden floorboards groaning under my feet. As I approached the steps, a sudden gust of cold air swept past me, strong enough to move my shirt. There were no open windows, no broken doors, nowhere for the wind to come from. My heart pounded, but a strange peace settled over me at the same time. I knelt at the altar and whispered, "Lord, if there's something here you want me to see, I'm listening." And that when the candles on the left side of the sanctuary, candles I never lit, flickered, once, then again, then stayed still. I felt a presence behind me, close enough that the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My breath caught, my hands shook, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense that something spiritual was brushing up against the physical world, and I wasn't sure if it had been waiting for someone to return, or simply waiting for someone to listen. Around 2:40 a.m., every sound inside the church vanished at once. Even my breathing felt muted. A heaviness settled over the entire sanctuary, the kind that makes you feel like you're being pulled underwater. The temperature dropped so sharply that my breath turned white in front of me. I pulled my jacket tighter, but it didn't help. It felt like the cold was coming from the walls themselves. I stood in the center aisle, and for a moment, the entire church felt suspended, like it was holding its breath. Then, at 2:57 a.m., I heard it, a single, deep thump from the balcony above. Not wood shifting, not wind. A deliberate step. Slow, heavy. Something was up there. Something moving. I lifted my flashlight again, but the beam shook in my hand. The light barely pierced the darkness. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, and then, exactly at 3 a.m., the moment I will never forget happened. A sound echoed through the sanctuary. A voice, low whispered, completely unrecognizable. It wasn't speaking a language I knew. It wasn't speaking from fear or anger. It was speaking like a warning, or a plea. My blood ran cold. I dropped to my knees as an overwhelming pressure filled the room, pressing down on my shoulders like a physical weight. I wasn't afraid for my life. I was afraid of what I might see if I turned around. The voice grew louder, echoing off the cracked walls, filling the air with something that felt ancient. My throat tightened, my eyes burned. I whispered, the only thing I could, "God, cover me." And instantly, everything stopped. The pressure lifted, the whispering ceased, the cold evaporated. The entire room released a breath it felt like it had been holding for decades. When silence returned, it wasn't empty like before. It felt cleansed, lighter, as if whatever had been trapped in the church had finally been given permission to leave. I sat on the cold floor, trembling but strangely calm. My prayers shifted from fear to gratitude. Gratitude for protection. Gratitude for presence. Gratitude for a God who steps into places humans abandoned long ago. Around 4 a.m., I fell into the deepest prayer I've ever experienced. A kind of prayer that feels less like speaking and more like collapsing into God's hands. And in that stillness, a realization hit me with a clarity I can fully explain. Not every abandoned place is empty. Some spaces hold the weight of prayers never finished. Some places hold echoes of souls who sought God but left their cries lingering in the walls. And sometimes, God brings someone back to finish what was started. When the sun finally broke through the cracked windows, lighting the sanctuary in soft gold, the church no longer felt haunted. It felt healed. The air was warm, the shadows gentle. I stood, walked toward the door, and as I left, I whispered, "Thank you for meeting me here." Because I knew deep inside me, what happened at 3 a.m. wasn't meant to scare me. It was meant to show me that light can still enter places forgotten by everyone, except God.